Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we'll be talking about the NFL Power Rankings Post-Draft Edition. This on another episode of Ranked at number 32, we have the New Orleans Saints. Last time's ranking, 29. New Orleans Saints had an unfortunate news story get revealed ahead of the 2025 NFL Draft, and that was that Derek Carr might miss most of, if not all, the 2025 season. And because of this, they took a quarterback to potentially replace him in the second round. Now, the Saints, their main issue is a lot of their talent's getting older, and even though they did take Kelvin Banks Jr. in the first round, he looked pretty good. I don't think the Saints have the talent necessary to survive not having Derek Carr leading their team. At rank 31, we have the Tennessee Titans. Last time's ranking, 32. Tennessee got their guy in Cam Ward with the first overall pick, and a big focus in getting wide receivers and a tight end in the fourth round. I think the Tennessee Titans are still going to be pretty bad. Their roster was very depleted of talent after the 2024 season, and even if all of these draft picks turn out to be stars, it still won't offset how depleted their roster is. At rank 30, we have the New York Giants. Last time's ranking, 31. The New York Giants came into this draft knowing that anyone they take would have to help them immediately and potentially save their head coach and GM's jobs. So, what did they do? They took Abdul Carter in the first round, and that was a great move, and he will do the most out of anyone they drafted this year in potentially trying to save their GM and coach's jobs. However, they also moved back up into the first round to take Jackson Dart at quarterback. Ranked at number 29, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Last time's ranking, 30. The Jacksonville Jaguars traded up in the 2025 draft and selected Travis Hunter, who is both a wide receiver and a cornerback. And if he does play both ways, he's a great asset to the team. They targeted another cornerback in the third round, and they mainly focused on defense for the rest of the draft while taking a few pieces for O-line and a few depth pieces at running back. Ranked at number 28, we have the Cleveland Browns. Last time's ranking, 27. The Cleveland Browns went into this draft knowing that they weren't going to get everything they wanted. And in the first round, they took Mason Graham, who will be a nice piece to put alongside Myles Garrett on their defensive line. They targeted a running back in the second round along with the linebacker. The running back's important because of Nick Chubb leaving. And they came out of this draft with two rookie quarterbacks in Dylan Gabriel and Shadir Sanders. Now, ranked at number 27, we have the Indianapolis Colts. Last time's ranking, 26. The Colts addressed their main need this offseason in the first round by taking Tyler Warren, the tight end, and this helps their team mainly because for the past few seasons they've been trotting out no-name tight ends for a few years now. And by taking Warren, it's a massive upgrade to the position if he turns out to be as good as his pedigree says. Ranked at number 26, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, and their last ranking was at 28. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders, they moved up instantly as soon as they drafted Ashton Jeanty because he improves their running game so much. They didn't really have a running game in 2024, so by taking Jeanty, they immediately upgrade their offense, and that's not even going over the fact that they, through all of their draft picks in this draft class, got themselves two new rookie wide receivers and two new rookie tackles, all of whom they took between round 1 and 4. And they addressed a few other positions later for depth purposes, but the focus they had on taking offense early really helps because the Raiders needed that kind of help on the offense. Ranked at number 25, we have the New York Jets. Last time's ranking, 25. The New York Jets, they didn't really do anything crazy this draft class. They took needs and they didn't go out of their way to upgrade anything drastically. In the first round, they took Armand Membu, and he'll be an immediate starter for their O-line. And for the rest of their draft class, they mainly took players that will likely just be depth pieces, but potentially could develop into starters. At rank number 24, we have the New England Patriots. Last time's ranking, 24. The Patriots came into this draft needing to shore up their offense and get some depth pieces for defense. And I think they accomplished that. In the first round, they selected Will Campbell, who will be an immediate starter on their O-line to protect Drake May. And in the second and third rounds, they got Drake May two nice weapons in Travion Henderson and Kyle Williams at running back and receiver position, respectively. And in the later rounds, they focused more on getting defensive depth pieces, and they did a good job of that. However, I don't think they did anything to truly catapult them ahead in the power rankings. At rank number 23, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Last time's ranking, 23. The Dallas Cowboys had a interesting draft, to be sure, because at pick number 1, they went offensive guard with Tyler Booker. And while I think Tyler Booker's a good guard prospect, it might have been a slight bit of a reach for the Cowboys, mainly just because they had a need at guard, so they took guard as soon as they could, and it might have been a reach at where they drafted him. But I think they still addressed the need, which is a good thing. One interesting thing they did was they took 2 running backs in this draft, which the Cowboys running back room is already pretty bad, so adding more running backs into it just gives more opportunities to potentially find a true starting running back. At rank number 22, we have the Miami Dolphins. Last time's ranking, 18. Now, the Miami Dolphins, they have had some drama heading into the draft because Jalen Ramsey is probably going to be traded sooner rather than later, and Tyreek Hill has once again inserted himself into the drama reels. But heading into this draft, they needed to get some pieces on for both the defense and offense. In round 2, they selected a guard, which is the least they could do to try and keep Tua alive, and they focused on defensive tackle early, which is not surprising considering the Miami Dolphins defense was not stellar in 2024. At rank 21, we have the Carolina Panthers. Last time's ranking, 22. The Carolina Panthers went into this draft, and they had a few needs. One, they needed to find some more offensive weapons for their quarterback, Bryce Young, to take advantage of his success at the end of the 2024 season, and they needed to beef up that defense. To that effect, they did well. In the first round, they took Tet McMillan, who is a good wide receiver prospect, and he might just be the elite prospect Bryce Young needs at the position. And they beefed up their defense in rounds 2 and 3, taking an edge rusher and a defensive end, respectively. At rank 20, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Last time's ranking, 21. The San Francisco 49ers had a massive amount of free agents leave in the 2025 offseason, and heading into this draft, they needed to replace a lot of people. Now, only time will tell how many of these draft picks actually live up to the people they're replacing, but the sheer number of them is kind of impressive. At rank 19, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Last time's ranking, 20. The Arizona Cardinals went into this draft with their defense being the main issue for the team, and they focused almost exclusively on defense. Of their 7 picks in this draft, only one of them was on offense, and that was an offensive guard, and the rest was focused on beefing up that defense. In the first round, they took Walter Nolan, a defensive tackle. In the second round, they took Will Johnson, cornerback, and in the third, they took Jordan Birch, defensive end. Ranked at number 18, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last time's ranking, 15. The Pittsburgh Steelers, honestly, I think had a pretty good draft. They got Derek Harmon in the first round. They grabbed a new running back in Caleb Johnson in the third, and for the rest of the draft, they've mainly focused on defense. However, in round 6, they took Will Howard, a quarterback from Ohio State. And while the Aaron Rodgers situation remains up in the air, them taking a quarterback, even though it was a late round quarterback, feels like they are preparing for the worst case scenario of what if Aaron Rodgers does not come to the Steelers. At rank 17, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Last time's ranking, 16. The Cincinnati Bengals only had 6 picks in this year's draft, and unsurprisingly, they were focused on 2 main areas: their offensive line and their defense. The Bengals' defense was atrocious in 2024, so them picking defense early with Shamir Stewart and Demetrius Knight makes a lot of sense. They're trying to improve that defense to at least a decent level where it isn't going to fall apart immediately. At rank 16, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Last time's ranking, 17. The Atlanta Falcons only selected 5 people in the 2025 NFL Draft, but they made those picks count. They were almost exclusively focused on defense, and that makes a lot of sense. The Falcons' defense, especially in their pass rushing ability in 2024, was extremely lacking. So seeing them take 2 potential pass rushers in the first round in Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. makes a lot of sense. Those 2, if they pan out, will upgrade the Falcons' pass rush. At rank 15, we have the Chicago Bears. Last time's ranking, 19. The Chicago Bears continue to do what is joked about them every offseason, and that is win the offseason. In the first 2 rounds, they focused mainly on getting offensive pieces in Colston Loveland at tight end and Luther Burden third, but the Bears had a decently solid draft. I think along with free agency, they've done a lot to help that team heading forward. That offense will look nothing like it did last year, at least hopefully, and the Bears have indeed improved their roster a lot over 2024. At rank 14, we have the Houston Texans. Last time's ranking, 12. The Houston Texans, honestly, I feel like they missed a bit with their draft. They focused on taking wide receivers in round 2 and 3. They got an offensive tackle in round 2, but they didn't really, outside of that tackle in round 2, focus on getting protection for C.J. Stroud. And after trading away Laremy Tunsil, they needed to do that, which they unfortunately haven't done really all that much this offseason. At rank 13, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Last time's ranking, 13. The Seattle Seahawks drafted a lot of people in 2025, but you could see where their focus was early on. When in round 1, they took Gray Zabel, an offensive guard. They were mainly focused on beefing up their offense and getting depth at it. So, heading into 2025, the Seahawks will have a much improved offense just if any of these variety of players pans out. At rank number 12, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. Last time's ranking, 14. The LA Chargers, they went into this draft knowing that they needed to get wide receivers for Justin Herbert. And they got 2 of them. They got Trey Harris in round 2 and Keandre Lambert-Smith in round 5. And along with those 2 wide receivers, they got a new defensive tackle in round 3, and they got Amarian Hampton at running back in the first round. I think this plays perfectly into Harbaugh's system of having a heavy running game, but it also helps Herbert be able to throw when he needs to by bringing in more wide receivers to potentially be pass-catching options for the Chargers. At rank 11, we have the Denver Broncos. Last time's ranking, 10. The Denver Broncos had a very good draft, and in the first round they took Jahdae Barron, who, along with Riley Moss and Patrick Surtain, will be probably the scariest trio of cornerbacks in the NFL. In the second round, they addressed running back, which was a big need for them because in 2024 their running game was terrible. And in round 3, they went out and got Bo Nix, another wide receiver option. At rank number 10, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Last time's ranking, 9. The Minnesota Vikings, they only selected 5 people in the 2025 draft, but the few that they did select will definitely help them out. In the first round, they took an offensive guard, which is very important because protecting J.J. McCarthy is of utmost importance because he is basically a rookie quarterback still. He never stepped foot on the field in his rookie year, and Donovan Jackson will be an upgrade to that O-line. At rank 9, we have the Green Bay Packers. Last time's ranking 11. The Packers had an amazing draft. With their first and their third round pick, they select the wide receivers, and with their second round pick, they select an offensive tackle. That alone makes them better and moves them up the list, because the Packers selecting wide receivers is amazing, because they haven't done that a lot in recent memory. At rank 8, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last time's ranking 8. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers went into this draft knowing that eventually they'd have to move on from both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans sometime in the future. So getting a new young wide receiver to potentially build into their next wide receiver one was important. And they did in round 1. Because Egbuka, while he wasn't rated as highly as some of the other round 1 wide receivers, he still looks pretty good. And the Buccaneers in rounds 2 and 3 focused on upgrading their secondary, which is very important. At rank number 7, we have the Washington Commanders. Last time's ranking 7. The Commanders only had 5 picks in this draft, but they made a few of them count. In the first round, they took an offensive tackle to help shore up that O-line for Jaden Daniels, and in the second round, they took a cornerback to help their defense. Their draft was honestly pretty decent. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. When you only have 5 draft picks to work with, it's hard to truly change the outlook of your team through a draft. At rank number 6, we have the Detroit Lions. Last time's ranking 5. The Detroit Lions came into this year's draft. They got a defensive tackle in round 1. They got offensive guard in round 2, receiver in round 3, and other guard in round 5. Their focus of getting mainly depth pieces, I think, works out great, because if we know anything about the Lions, especially after 2024, it's that they need depth in case of injuries. At rank number 5, we have the Los Angeles Rams. Last time's ranking 4. The Rams had a good draft in getting a lot of valuable players at the various positions they drafted. And they got a tight end, Terrace Ferguson, in the second round. They got Josiah Stewart, a defensive end, in the third. And they got another running back in the fourth. Their draft kind of ignored some of the positions they have the biggest need at, which is, of course, cornerback. At rank number 4, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Last time's ranking 3. The Chiefs came into this offseason looking to rebuild their defense a little bit, get more pieces, get tackled to fill in on their offensive line, which had lost several pieces this offseason, and I think they did that. They got several defensive pieces throughout the draft. They got Josh Simmons in the first round, who's an offensive tackle who should slot into that O-line immediately, and the Chiefs had a pretty solid draft, all things considered. At rank number 3, we have the Buffalo Bills. Last time's ranking 6. The Buffalo Bills had a great draft, and you can't convince me otherwise. Throughout the first 5 rounds, pretty much all they did was focus on beefing up that defense, which they needed to do after last season. The defense was definitely the Bills' weakness in 2024. At rank number 2, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Last time's ranking 2. The Baltimore Ravens selected a lot of players in this year's draft, but most importantly, they got the safety Malachi Starks in the first round. Starks will line up, of course, next to Kyle Hamilton, and they should terrorize opposing receiving corps throughout 2025. And finally, at rank 1, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Last time's ranking 1. The Eagles did a great job in finding a lot of defensive pieces to replace the people they lost after the 2024 season, and until we see how these draft picks pan out, it's hard not to think that Howie Roseman did it again. With that being said, guys, please like, share, subscribe down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.